Hey everybody, good afternoon. I'm Dustin. This is the Ask Me Anything hour. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, we answer your questions about nutrition and health and anything. We got a bunch of questions to get through today. So I'm going to jump right in. But if you have questions while I'm going through it, please do ask us those questions and I'll get alerted and we'll try to answer them right away live. We're going to be here again on Thursday, and then over the weekend, actually, I'll be at Parker University. We're teaching a 12-hour continued education program for doctors. So if you guys are in the area, I will be around, and that would be a good place to catch me live. And you'll be around a lot of great minds. So if you're ever around and you have some questions, you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, this weekend's a great time to do it. Okay, we're going to talk today about blood sugar balancing. We're going to talk about diabetes. We're going to talk about sugar cravings and excess hunger. We're going to talk about over-medicating, and we're going to talk about a condition called hidradenitis suppurativa, a very complex condition. And we're also going to talk about genetics and DNA sequencing, which is becoming very fashionable these days. So I'm going to start out with the Redfin waffles that we tagged here. So we go out to Expo West every year to look at over all the products that are available on the market, because we want to be able to steer people towards those products that are going to be the healthiest, the ones that are going to be the better choices and hopefully the best choices out there. And I was lucky enough to speak with the people at Redfin Waffles because it was actually a really good tasting product and really low in sugar. And that's what we're looking for, is there are people out there, and we don't want to turn our back on those people who are going to eat sugar. They want to have sugar, they want something sweet in their life. And of course we want to encourage them not to eat sugar and reduce sugar and get it out of your life as much as possible. But we have to be realistic and we have to be practical. So we're always looking for something that will help satisfy that sweet craving and help them from going a little bit crazy and beating themselves up for eating and indulging. And instead of eating a candy bar, we want to give them something else. So after speaking with them, I said, it would be really interesting if you guys did have a little more fiber and a little less sugar and less and a cleaner source of sugar. And they have contacted me and got back to me because they did exactly that. So kudos to them for keeping the records and trying to make things better and better all the time. And we sampled one yesterday, and it was actually very tasty. And here's the beautiful thing. It is 1 gram of sugar and 2 grams of fiber. That is so unheard of in anything that is going to taste this good. So for those people out there who are looking for something that they need a little sweetness for, this would be an awesome suggestion. Next month, the Strong and Health box is going to be the blood sugar balancing box. And we're going to include samples of these for everybody, because my hope is that people will incorporate these as something to give out over the Halloween holiday, as opposed to high, crazy sugar content garbage that's out there. And actually there's 3 different flavors. There is a Dutch caramel vanilla, really good. There is a snickerdoodle, and what was the one that we had yesterday? It was what?
Cookies and cream.
Cookies and cream. So we're going to be sending these out as samples and those, so keep your eye out for these guys. Actually, it's a really good option for people who are struggling and want something sweet, want to give somebody a treat, but don't want to be giving them something that's completely stripping them of anything that's going to be of value. So 1 gram of sugar, 2 grams of fiber, great ratio for that. Okay, so that leads into the next thing. We have a lot of people asking about having excessive hunger and sugar or salt cravings, actually, and feeling hungry shortly after eating. So here are the things to remember very quickly. Fiber and fat are the things that are going to help you feel full. So if you're not eating foods that have fiber and fat in them, most likely you're going to be increasing ghrelin. Ghrelin is that hunger hormone, and suppressing the leptin, which is the one that makes you feel full. So instead, examine your meal. What did you have? Was it all carbohydrates? Was it just like fruit? Was it just was it really carb heavy, high in carbs but no fat or fiber? Pay attention to those things, and this is why we're always such a big fan of raw nuts and seeds, because the raw nuts and seeds are a quick delivery system for whole fat, good healthy fat, and fiber. Those are the first 2 things I would examine if I'm always feeling hungry after eating. Also, if it's a sweet sensation you're looking for, I would also look at making sure you're getting some type of bitters into your life. Bitters are going to be very helpful to engage the bitter receptors, because our sugar receptors are getting overstimulated. We want to balance them out with a little bit of bitter. So things like kale are actually a bitter. So make sure you're looking for things like that in your life. And 2 other things to think about. When we're still hungry, one of the things our body's looking for is nutrient satisfaction. And sometimes the signaling we're getting that we're still hungry is because we're not getting what the body's looking for. And there are so many micronutrients. If there was one thing I could tell everybody to start focusing on, it's micronutrients. There's so many times I'll have somebody come to me and say, I spoke to this person about nutrition, and they said to count my calories and count my carbs. And you know what? There is something to making sure you're aware of your macronutrients, your fat, your fiber, your protein. The calories, I would way encourage you to stop thinking about calories and really start thinking about the micronutrient density. Micronutrients being things like your vitamins and your minerals. We have to get these minerals and vitamins in our body to function. And if we don't have enough of them, oftentimes our body's going to be sending signals saying, I need more nutrients. A lot of times a sugar craving can be because you're not getting enough potassium. Because without potassium, we really have a hard time making glycogen. Potassium is essential for making that. And when our blood sugar dips, our body wants to grab that glycogen. If we don't have enough potassium to make it, then it's going to say, I need more sugar, because we need sugar. So pay attention to the micronutrients. This is really important to understand. And finally, salt cravings. We have, again, demonized salt, because when you're looking at things like table salt, I would agree with that. I wouldn't want people to be doing lots of table salt. That is it's just straight sodium, sodium chloride usually, and then there's other chemicals that can be put in there to keep it from sticking together. When you're getting a real whole food salt, we need tons of actual micronutrients, including sodium. We have to have it. So sometimes we need a little bit more than what we're giving ourselves, but give it to yourself in a whole food state. So much more powerful, so much more nourishing for the body. Very important for feeling hydrated. We have to have all of those little, again, micronutrients that are going to come in that. There's a great book by Dr. Brownstein. He talks about salting your way to health, and he actually suggests somewhere around like 6 tablespoons of whole, real, like sea salt. So that's an interesting way to look at it, but use that information and understand that your body is looking for those micronutrients as well. And a lot of times it can have to do with adrenal insufficiency. If you're burning out your adrenals, your body's going to be craving salt. Also, potassium is going to be important for that. Okay, so let's talk about diabetes a little bit. I have a lot of people being just kind of poo-pooing it and really not paying attention to it because they're saying, well, my numbers are going up, but I don't feel anything. And that's the dangerous thing, is you got to make sure that you're paying attention to the long-term effects of having too much sugar in your bloodstream. I'm not going to go into all the details about that, but what I want people to understand is that use that information as a feedback to understand why is that happening and how can I make things better. That is one of the most correctable things in our society, is being able to get your blood sugars balanced, because there's so many factors that are going to influence it, as opposed to just taking a ton of medications. I really want you all to pay attention. There's an article I'm going to put below about over-medicating when it comes to blood sugars. This is a huge study. Mayo Clinic is really helping out people understand that we're overdoing it with the medication. We're not doing enough on the lifestyle factors. And I have seen people that I've talked to who are on 3 different blood sugar lowering medications. And obviously, there are other things that they need to be doing to get there instead of putting more and more, and they're causing all kinds of health problems. So be aware that if you are on any of those medications, you should read this article and start to incorporate those things into your life that you're going to be able to help balance it, so you don't become part of that category of people that are getting sicker because they're taking too much of those. Okay, and finally, are there any questions so far in any of this? I know I might be talking fast and I'm saying a lot of different crazy things, so please give me some pushback, guys. Ask me about these things. I don't want you to just accept what I'm saying without questioning it. I want to make sure that everything I said makes sense and that there are ways that we can have a greater discussion about this and figure out how we can improve the situation. So we have something called hidradenitis suppurativa that we've been asked about. And here's, when you have a diagnosis like that, when you have some type of condition, I mean, it is helpful for some people so that they can have a label on it, but it doesn't help us in terms of understanding what's causing it. And that's always going to be the question. What are the things that are contributing to this? When we get isolated into this idea that we finally have a diagnosis and then we go to the medical model and say, what is the treatment for this diagnosis? That's where we start to trip up and fall flat, because a lot of times the cause is unknown because they're looking for a singular cause. So when we're looking at things from a holistic standpoint, we're examining so many other things that could be contributing to this state, and those are the things that you're going to want to start to pay attention to from a lifestyle state. I did actually see a TEDx talk about this condition, and when you hear the gentleman talk, he talks about all of the health conditions that were beating him up over his whole life, and then he developed this. So any number one of those, but most likely a combination of all those stressors, are starting to lead to this expression from the body that something isn't right. And before going after something, one isolated thing to kind of change that, first we want to look at what are all the things the body has to have to be able to manage its own business in the first place. And this is where we go off. We start to look for something that is outside of the body to be able to change this, instead of looking to say, well, am I getting enough potassium? Am I getting enough magnesium? Am I getting enough of all the things that my body needs to just function in the first place? And maybe it can handle this if I'm nourishing my body and if I can digest it and get it in there. And this is my last point on the same thing with the DNA sequencing, is it's so tempting for people to want to go out and get data on themselves and say, well, my DNA says this and this and this about what I need to eat and how I need to eat it. But that does not change the fact that you have a human body, and your human body still requires protein. It still requires essential fats. It still requires potassium and magnesium and zinc and iron, without which you're not human. It doesn't matter what your DNA is saying, you still have to have those. And before trying to figure out these other fancy things down the road, make sure you're satisfying those first, and then take that information to see what more it can do for you. I feel like we're skipping a major step in health by not paying attention to what the body needs to do its job first, and then we start to miss things, and things get worse and worse and worse because we never came back and examined this very important first step about being nourished and getting what our body needs. Okay, so back to that condition, 2 questions I would ask. What happened before the condition started to come on? Pay attention to the things that were going on in the year before that. Were you on a massive round of antibiotics? So many times I'll talk to people and they will say, all of a sudden I had this condition come on. I said, well, was it all of a sudden? What happened over the last few years? And they had been on antibiotic after antibiotic after antibiotic. And the microbiome is so complex that every time you're on that antibiotic, it is definitely changing a lot of what's going on in your body, including, but not limited to, your genetic expression. We're outnumbered 99-1 by the genes of our microbiome. So you have to be respectful of this probiotic complexity that's happening in your body. If you get that focus and you get that balance and you pay attention to what you've done to that, then that can make a huge difference. The individual in the TED Talk was talking about so many things that he was doing that were destroying his microbiome. So rebuild the microbiome first, see if that's going to help you get healthier overall. And the other thing is one of the things that they were trying to do is surgically remove this condition that was going on with him. But let me ask you this, surgically removing it, does that change the conditions under which it developed in the first place? Not at all. So it is a very short-term solution to a long-term problem. You still have to take that information and help your body understand what it's missing so it can get back to the business of healing itself. It looks like you've got a question for me. Pink salt. Brittany, great question. Yes, pink salt can be very good. But pink Himalayan salt, real salt, as long as it is a natural occurring salt, and it has minerals in it, that's what's important. You just don't want to get something that has been refined, something that has had all the other minerals removed from it, and it's just a sodium chloride with some type of anti-caking agent in it. So pink salt, usually a very good choice, so keep that up. Okay, any other questions before we go today? I know it's a lot of information and it's a total different way of thinking about things, so it's going to change the way that you're approaching health when you start to understand what your body can do for you and first examining what could be missing. So for those of you out there who are suffering from some type of condition and you're not getting an answer, start to look at those first. Start to look at what's missing from your life and maybe look at what happened to you up to and before that could have contributed to this, and help bring that information together so that you have self-knowledge and you understand how to keep yourself healthy and strong. Thanks for watching, guys. Please keep the questions coming. I hope you're enjoying these. If you do find this helpful, please share this video with people who you think could use to examine things at the next level. And don't accept limits on your health. Just because somebody said that this is all you can do, that just means that they've reached the end of their knowledge. Your knowledge can go beyond that. So keep learning. Thanks for watching, guys.